So over the last couple of days, we have been talking about Access Football 2019 and Maximum Football 2019. If you're new to the channel, these are two independent football games that have come out on the market in the last week or so. We've gone over both of them in full reviews. We've done live streams of both games. So you may be wondering, okay, which one should I pick up? And for some reason you decided I should be the one to help you with that. So that's what we're here to discuss. We are finally going to put these two head to head and see which game deserves your $30, or if neither of them do. So sit back and relax. Don't forget to like, it'll really help us out. Get subscribed so you can get notified of more content like this. Grab a cold one and let's party. So some of us have had a few days with both Maximum Football 19 and Access Football 19, or perhaps one or the other. Or perhaps neither, and that's why you're here. Maybe you're living vicariously through content creators like myself. I bought both games so some of you didn't have to, and honestly because I was interested in these games and had a desire to support these indie developers. These are independent titles that visually didn't look like the most polished football experiences, so the $30 price tag both of these currently hold may have been off-putting to some people. I've had the privilege to play both games for an extended amount of time over the weekend, and even had the chance to live stream both to quite a few of you. And I thank those of you who were able to join those streams and take part in further discussions. So now that you've had a few days to watch my reviews on both Access and Maximum, you probably wonder, well, if I can only pick one, which game should it be? The answer eventually comes down to you, but perhaps you need some persuasion in one direction or the other. Well, thankfully I am here. So let's put Access and Maximum up against each other and see how they stack side by side. Before we get there, let's preview what exactly is being compared so we have a basis of a decision to go off of. We will have 7 points, and the game with the most points wins. The first thing we'll discuss is the overall user interface of each game. This will be all-encompassing in certain respects. This will include menu navigations, stat and score overlays, settings, menus, options, and ease of use when looking at the game outside of the gameplay. After that, we'll go over sound. So the sound will include menu music, in-game music, football sounds, and announcing. Next will be customization. Does the game provide an easy customization tool? Is it robust or restricted? All of it will be discussed. Next will be graphics. Now, I know this is somewhat touched on in the user interface, but this will be the in-game graphics. How do the models look? Are the stadiums good? How do the football games look as football games? And as football games, how do they play? Is the AI balanced? Does the game play realistically? And do these football simulation games provide a true simulation experience? Game modes will follow next. Does the game provide options outside of their main focus? And lastly, speaking of main focus, how does Dynasty stack up against Franchise? We'll end our direct comparisons with the reason why you'd buy either of these games, Maximum's Dynasty mode and Access's Franchise mode. After all that is discussed, I will give you a final verdict, and you can let me know in the comment section why I'm wrong or why I wasted $60. But without further ado, let's get into it. The user interface. Both games use the color blue as their main color overlay, which is a typical in sports video games whether you've realized it or not. But immediately off the bat, between the two you can see a clear difference between the two. On the Maximum side, you can see an interface that shows off one of its in-game models and providing a less than eye-pleasing home screen. On the Access side, you get a clean, sleek, and almost futuristic dashboard. When using these interfaces, Access shows to be incredibly snappy, responsive, and shows no lag whatsoever. When you eventually jump into editing players in Maximum, you will notice clear slowdowns. And this may be expected when 130 plus teams are involved, but on the flip side of that, you aren't loading all 130 teams up at once to edit these rosters. Editing rosters within Maximum is quite the chore due to the slowdown of these menus. Access shows none of these issues and is incredibly responsive. You aren't waiting with load times throughout the menu until you are starting up a game or exiting, but that aspect is to be expected. Moving on to the game itself, Maximum provides a CBS-inspired score overlay, which was one of my talking points within my Maximum review. CBS's score overlay is my favorite current active score overlay in all of football, so Maximum taking clear inspiration from it was a welcome aspect of it to me. However, the rest of the overlays are less than desirable. You get no in-game stat overlays, leaving you with very empty presentation features. The pause menu will give you limited amount of team stats, but no way to access player stats. Over in Access, they provide a more uniquely styled score overlay, but everything Maximum does wrong with their overlays within the game itself, Access does right. They provide constant updates in the corner during gameplay with drive updates including time of possession, yards, and more, as well as player updates throughout the game. Within the pause menu, you can access full team and player stats, letting you fully immerse in keeping up with your player stats. Pause menu is a good segue into the next section of our first comparison, The pause menu in Access provides you with stuff to actually do. You get an options menu to adjust settings on the fly, including penalty settings and in-game tweaks. Not to mention a depth chart. Maximum provides none of this. The pause menu is essentially there to let you pause. You get to see team stat comparisons, but that is it. The only way you can adjust your depth chart is the play calling menu, and that is only by formation. Nothing can be adjusted in your Maximum games at all. That doesn't go for just in-game, but out-of-game as well. Maximum has no settings menu to speak of whatsoever, so nothing can be adjusted. Only pre-game in the team selection menu. There you can adjust time, difficulty, catch probability, and other very minor adjustments. Maximum's in-game options are the same as out-of-game. So group with the ability to adjust settings throughout the game, adjust lineups, a much more complete stat tracking system, cleaner overlays, and a snappy UI, Access takes the first point in a landslide. Next is sound. In Access you get commentary, licensed music, crowd noise, and football noises. Perhaps commentary music though mean nothing to you. That's fine, and I get that. The commentary in Access leaves a lot to be desired. And let me make it clear, that is not Terry McGovern, Kyle Broke, or Linnea Sage's fault. I just imagine that the announcing cohesion was not the top of Access Games' priorities. Considering it's still not all that bad. Okay, so we turned down commentary and music, so what does Maximum offer to compare? Well, a standard drum line at launch, and that ends once you hit the menu, and then silence. Dead silence. Go into the game, and then what? Very faint crowd noise, rain noise if it's raining, and a drum line every now and then. There's also a PA announcer that's barely audible as well, and if you listen hard enough, you might hear some football noises too. Maximum just sounds muted. I'm okay with playing a sports game with the sounds of the game, but only if I can hear them. Maximum needs to adjust the sound level of this, which would be nice to be able to do personally, but to me, I think overall Access has to take this as well. There's a complete sound experience as a game with the inclusion of commentary, licensed music, leveled out game noises, and the ability to adjust them in-game. Access is up to nothing. Next, we get into customization. Access Games has promised an update to the uniform editor in a future update, but we can only compare what we got at launch, and well, I wasn't impressed. To be fair, a ton of potential is to be had, but in a nutshell, here's what you can customize. The color, numbers, and letters. And that's it. Well, you can change the font too and the helmet's finishes, but that is really all you can do. You can't change team logos, let alone create one, and the only uniform customization you really do is mix and matching what is already in the game. Adjusting the colors is abysmally slow as well. Maximum absolutely destroys Access in this regard. You can change the uniform color, the color and outline of the lettering and the numbers, the pants colors, as well as the helmet's color. And while I'm not the biggest fan of RGB sliders to be able to adjust the colors, it is far snappier than what Access gives us. Access even teased me with showing a hexadecimal code, but no way to manually enter one in. That would have been absolutely clutch, and I hope it's part of their uniform editor update. But back to Maximum. Not only do we have full customization options for the uniform, we have a logo editor. And while I'm not an artist, Reddit has shown there are plenty of artists out there and they have done an amazing job. Just check a few of these out. Canuck Play really hyped up that this was essentially our world to create, and they didn't hold back. While Access provides much better default jerseys, and it isn't even close, Maximum gets on the board and takes customization, which is what this is all about, by a landslide, so Access still leads 2-1. Next are the graphics. So we already discussed overlays and menus, so this is the in-game graphics. How do the graphics look and react? Access has a nice coating of paint, but underneath that paint are some troublesome issues. Access feels brighter and looks like it should be the better looking and physically should react better, right? Well, no. When it comes to the feel physically, it looks like more details added into it in the form of the end zone paint and some of the banners, but that's where the praise stops. The players have a weird stance to them, and for instance, punting just looks entirely wrong. They don't have natural body physics, and what I mean by that is by the way they stand and the way they look when they get hit. The images on the field look great, but the stands are also half empty. It's one step forward and two steps back in certain areas. The game itself doesn't feel like I'm watching a professional football game, and we'll get into why that means so much to me in just a second. With Maximum, they achieve what Access doesn't, and that's the look and feel of a collegiate environment. When I look at the game, the atmospheric setting looks like it's a college game. I attribute it to good lighting. It just looks correct. The stadium looks extremely well done, and the crowd is full and isn't distracting with how it was done. The players also stand far more naturally, and while the tackling physics and the physics of the game itself aren't going to win any awards, they react far better than they do in Access. Maximum ties it up at 2. Admittedly, the next section is going to be the most difficult to judge, and that is the gameplay. If you've played both games, you know there are trade-offs to both titles. And we have patches incoming to help in certain areas, but this is meant for the games at launch. And even with the incoming Maximum patch, I don't think it would affect my discussion. So let's start with the good Maximum. Running. Well, there isn't much good about running this game due to one big issue. There's a delay in handoffs currently. And, well, make that 2 issues, because also when you pitch on certain plays, it sends the ball back about 25 yards behind the halfback, resulting in a fumble and typically a huge loss. However, when you do get the ball to run, it is genuinely fun. Admittedly, that's it for the good in running. Passing. Passing is very frustrating. It's frustrating to no end of Maximum. You'll hit the shoulder pads of many receivers, or you'll hit an easy 80-yard touchdown. Nearly every time, this is how passing will go. Defense from a running standpoint is probably the best aspect of this game when it comes to gameplay. Much like offense, and of course this could be subjective because I like run offense and defense, run defense is quite fun to play. I feel like there's a true balance to it. You'll want to hold and cherish run defense because pass defense is almost a death sentence. While the current issue of getting burnt deep is prevalent, I'm convinced interceptions currently do not exist in this game. On either side. In my latest live stream, I threw at least 10 passes that bounced off of defenders and were passes that should have been intercepted all day. Likewise, I'll try to user catch interceptions and have not had a sliver of luck. Neither is my CPU AI. And don't get me started on kicking. The lack of any feedback from kicking and inconsistency leaves a ton to be desired. I love the mechanic, don't get me wrong, I just hate the execution. In fact, the mechanic may be my current favorite in all of football games. It just needs a ton of work still. You'll wonder why you kick line drives on certain kicks and get decent kicks the next. Now, let's flip it to access. Because everything I just mentioned in Maximum are like the complete opposite. Passing is quite enjoyable in access. You'll be punished for stupid throws and getting picked off, and trust me, I have experience in this actually happen, but you'll also be rewarded for hitting the open receiver as well. Are there some drops that shouldn't happen? Of course, but I'm not expecting perfection, but the passing game is far better here. Running is quite fun in access as well, but I think it's on the easier side here, and I have to say that you can exploit the defense pretty easily with the quarterback and running with them quite often. I'd probably give Maximum the nod in the running here if there wasn't that ugly handoff delay and pitching bug currently going on. Defensively, you'll get to experience the good things that are in Maximum, but with the ability to intercept passes. I eventually found myself not having problems getting in front of the ball and picking passes off that I should be able to. On the downside, defenders cannot catch in stride. So if a ball is going over your shoulder and you try to catch it, your defender will stop where they are and leave the receiver open to wherever the ball is going. That is a problem. Kicking is also the exact opposite here compared to Maximum. It is far too easy, but you do understand what you are doing. Overall, for me personally, playing the game feels far more natural and correct in access than Maximum. If Maximum fixes their problems, however, I think they'll have the more realistic gameplay style for sure. While Access plays as a better football game at the moment, it does have an arcadey feel to it. That being said, Access still takes the point and moves to a 3-2 lead. Game modes. Now, we will cover the game modes that aren't the coup de grace of each game, so Dynasty and Franchise will not be discussed in this section. Access has an exhibition mode and a uniform editor. That's it. Maximum has an exhibition mode which allows you to play games in a professional football setting based in the United States as well as Canada. You can't use college teams in this, which is a bummer, but you'll want to use the collegiate teams elsewhere anyway. You'll also get to edit logos, which we already discussed. This logo editor is on top of being able to edit pro US and Canada teams as well as the schools. Outside of that, you can go through a season with the US or Canada teams, which pitch you into a season playing in those leagues. So if Dynasty mode isn't your thing, you'll be able to play in a long-form season with these pros. I jokingly skipped over this in my Maximum review, but it's really because there isn't much to cover. You can't pick a specific team to control, and you're really just getting an overview of the league, and you're allowed to cherry pick a team you want to play with, but it isn't like Dynasty at all. That being said, it's a mode that's here for you to use. Next, you get something known as the Spring League. This allows you to jump into practice mode essentially, something that is completely absent from Access. I couldn't care less about a practice mode personally, but I understand the desire for its inclusion from certain players, and I respect that. Maximum provides far more to do in its game outside its main draw when compared to Access, and they'll easily take the point here. So, who would have imagined that there would be a 3-3 tie needing one last thing to break it to decide the true winner? It's almost as if it was entirely designed this way for drama. So here we are, Dynasty versus Franchise, College versus Pros, Doug Flutie versus no-name Access player. Let's start with Maximum. NCAA Football 14 was 6 years ago. I remember working at a video store at the time and getting to take that game home before street date and playing it for a couple days, enjoying what it had to offer. Surrounding that game's release was the climax of an ongoing battle between student athletes and EA Sports and the NCAA using their likenesses without compensation. This has led us with no NCAA branded collegiate video game since. Maximum's given us a collegiate football experience, something many of us have been desperate to have since the release of NCAA 14. Here you'll get a dynasty mode surrounded by the ability to recruit athletes to your school. In the recruiting, you can go after recruits as soon as you start your dynasty. This includes sending them texts, calling them yourself, or having your assistant call them, all the way to offering them a scholarship. If you're a lower ranked school, high-level recruits won't even listen to you, providing you with an aspect of realism in this mode. Landing recruits won't be simple, but it will be a rewarding experience as it has always been. This is a great start and will only get better with future versions. You'll be able to pitch the athlete on several aspects of your university, and you'll want to emphasize what's important to them and hope your school does that specific aspect well, as it will only help you in your recruiting journey. You can get a good look at the top 100 prospects as well as keep track of your selected recruits in your own recruiting board. While the players themselves have odd attributes, sometimes including 300-pound wide receivers and defensive backs, they provide such a wide array of uniqueness that'll keep you busy for hours. I can't wait to see what new stuff they eventually add to the recruiting element. At the moment, I feel while it does have deep features, it still needs just a little more. What exactly, I'm not entirely sure, but I think we still have yet to see Canuck play's best work in recruiting. Elsewhere in Dynasty, you get to edit your players and the school itself. But you better be set on your settings because once you set them, you cannot edit difficulty or length of quarters until the off season. This is a poor design choice I hope to see updated eventually. Also, simulating will take a long time to complete. 60 games or so need to be simulated each week, and you'll be sitting there legitimately for a few minutes if you want to jump into the next game right away. Speaking of poor design choice, editing your depth chart is a nightmare in this game, and overall depth charts and maximum is such a trigger for me that I'm going to be moving on already. Over on Axis, it's a professional football setting. Unlike Maximum, Axis has a AAA equivalent on the market and will continue to do so because the likenesses can and will be paid for within Madden and the NFL. But just like Maximum, that is the length I will talk about EA's franchise because this isn't comparing Madden to Axis. In Axis, you get an owner mode style experience. You get to control updates to the team's facilities and amenities to provide boosts to your team. Boost to your team is non-existent in Maximum, so keep that in mind. Also non-existent in Maximum but present in Axis is the ability to do anything with your coaching staff. Maximum doesn't have a coaching staff to speak of, and not only does Axis have a head coach, but it has 3 coordinators and a full set of position coaches and a full set of scouts. Much like recruiting in Maximum, you get to scout athletes in the league competition below, which sees you scouting collegiate athletes in Axis. You have to strategize between your scouts for what positions they'll be scouting, and then you'll have to be particular about which prospects you'll want to scout. This provides an extra layer of depth that is absent from Maximum. Elsewhere within Axis and its franchise mode, you can conduct how practices are done, have a true depth chart to adjust, and you can enjoy a unique playoff style that is exclusive to Axis when it comes to football games. The tiered system that Axis provides is such a fun way to add replayability to its game, and while you can enjoy building the dynasty in Maximum that take you from a very low ranked school to #1 in the nation, Axis provides a minimum replay of 3 seasons to become the top dog. So, who takes the Better Game Award for independent football games in 2019? Well, the answer is up to you. Okay, I'm not pulling that, but seriously, this answer really could be up to you. I feel Dynasty vs. Franchise is such a subjective choice that it can be hard to pick. If you love Saturday afternoons and recruiting and finding that blue chip prospect, you'll pick Dynasty, no doubt. If you love pro football and the idea of owning a team and creating a legacy with the same quarterback for 15 years, you'll pick Franchise. And as these games stand, as someone who likes both, Axis does its coup de grace better. It's not that recruiting is bad in Maximum, but there's simply far more to do within Axis' franchise mode, from arranging your coaching staff and practices, but also its unique playoff system and the ease of use surrounding controlling your team. Franchise provides a much more complete experience at this time. So that puts Axis on top with a 4-3 win. In my opinion right now, if you're a college football fan and a professional football fan, I truly believe your $30 will overall be better spent in Axis. Not to mention that Axis will have a mobile port and currently has a PC port. And in that PC port, you have the ability to use mods, which immediately adds an extra layer of depth on top compared to Maximum. That being said, if you are a huge college football fan and pro football doesn't really intrigue you all that much, get Maximum. The overall experience is close enough that you'll want the college aspects, including recruiting and your football game. Or if you're like me, buy both, support both developers, and enjoy both games for what they both bring to the table. The choice is yours. So that was Axis vs. Maximum. What did you think? Are you going to pick up either of these games? Are you going to pick them both up? Or are you going to wait until these games get a little bit more polished to them? Let me know in the comments below. Drop a like, get subscribed. Don't forget to @ me on Twitter @PartyBall. And of course, I want to thank you for coming to my channel. And as always, party on.